Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a north side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
C says Heaven's Gate awaiting.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
It's Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with another edition of Kenzie's Krimes, a deep dive into a local murder, drama, mystery. And Kenzie, what do we have today?
I did my best to map this out, but it was a request from a listener. So today we're going to do the Sumava murders.
Sumava.
Justin Babs was a 20-year-old father of two. He had a 4-year-old daughter named Bailey and a 1-year-old son named Hunter. Justin loved his family and kids, and he actually did struggle as a juvenile, but he had recently found his way back. He was stepping up as a father, a friend, and a son. Now, Kimberly Spears. She was 39 years old and loved her 3 children. Richard Thomas. I know there's a lot of people here, so keep up with me.
Yeah, I need already a program.
All right. Richard Thomas was 23 years old.
Quarterback.
Yeah, not really. Not this one. But he had been friends with Justin Babs, the first man that I talked about, for nearly a decade. Richard was paying rent at a home in Sumava Resorts in Indiana, where he took care of his elderly grandmother and allowed his friend Sebastian Wedding to stay there, as well as Derek Cardosi, who stayed at his house and another residence. He bobbled in between. Now, this is where I'm going to put the asterisk. So Richard clearly had a big heart, as well as an open door to his friend and acquaintances. One article I read, again, 2 super credible sources, I have to say. One said that Richard Thomas was taking care of his elderly grandma and paid the rent. The other said it was just an 80-year-old woman and she paid the rent. The first one makes a lot more sense to me because I don't know why this 80-year-old woman would want to pay rent for all these strangers. That sounds like a story within itself. So I will say the article that said this was Richard's grandmother came out later. So I wonder if the initial details, they didn't realize that and they never corrected it. These 2 sources went head to head. So anyways.
I wish I knew a grandma to pay my rent.
Amen. Richard, again, big heart, open door policy, a lot of friends staying with him. Now, however, on August 28th, 2016, Richard's 80-year-old grandmother / 80-year-old strange woman that was not his grandmother found Justin Babs bleeding with stab wounds on their couch, and she called the cops. Now, again, this was Richard's friend of over a decade. The cops searched the home, finding horrific streaks of blood on the walls, and along with Justin's body stabbed to death on the couch, they kicked in a locked bedroom door to find Kimberly Spears and Richard Thomas also stabbed to death, laying on a blood-soaked mattress.
Ew.
The crime scene was gruesome, and it was very clear that there was a fight.
Wow. When we come back, the conclusion to Kenzie's Krimes with Brian and Kenzie on Q101, 3 minutes away.
The Brian and Kenzie Show.
On Q101.
Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with the conclusion to Kenzie's Krimes today. A deep dive into, well, I'll let Kenzie set this up where we're at.
Justin Babs, Kimberly Spears, and Richard Thomas were all found murdered in the Sumava Resorts in Indiana in the same home. Now, Richard allegedly was paying the rent of his elderly grandma and letting several other friends stay there, including Sebastian Wedding and Derek Cardosi, / a strange elderly woman was maybe letting all of them stay for free because there's 2 really, really credible news sources who said 2 completely different things.
Which would be a great thing if an old lady was paying rent for everybody.
The first one makes more sense to me, but
yeah.
I just want to throw the asterisk out in case somebody complains. Again, the people found murdered were not the elderly woman. She was alive and safe. But Justin Babs, Kimberly Spears, and Richard Thomas, okay?
All dead.
All dead. Now, Sebastian Wedding was a friend of Richard Thomas and was allowed to stay in his home. However, Sebastian was with his ex-girlfriend the very night of the murders. He pointed to a car that she recognized but knew wasn't his, and he made a slick comment about needing to put gas in that car so we could get it out of the state, which she thought was kind of weird and random, but brushed it off because she didn't really understand what he was talking about. Later that evening, he was messaging her on Facebook Messenger and then basically admitted to the murders on Facebook Messenger. His ex asked who was all there, and he responded with dead or alive, ?
I can't tell you how many times I get on Facebook Messenger and I get that response back.
Yeah, right?
Dead.
Unbelievable. I mean, not a tough fight he put up, right?
Yeah.
He then later named all 3 victims. So, wildly incriminating. Due to these transcripts, the access the men had to the home, because they were both staying there, and a bite mark on Sebastian's arm, and there was actually even more evidence than that, like DNA under fingernails and things like that. Both men were charged with multiple crimes in this triple homicide. It was a pretty open and shut case between the car, the messages, etc.
And the bite, I assume?
Ex-girlfriend did not have his back, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
Thought it was nuts. She actually messaged his mother and said, "What's wrong with your son? He murdered these 3 people."
What?
She texted the mom and said that.
Huh.
So she
What did she say to that text?
They said that she was aloof and not forthcoming. She had her son's back on this.
She was kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, Sebastian Wedding in court showed remorse and regret for the burglary gone wrong. So that's the conclusion that they ended up coming to, because initially they denied that they had anything to do with it. Then it turned into a burglary gone wrong. Apparently, Sebastian was actually a very timid person and had a lot of trauma in his past. Even the judge said, "I do believe Sebastian wished it didn't go this way." However, 3 murders. He received 55 years in prison. The families were actually not satisfied with that. I guess based on what he was found guilty of, the max sentence would have been 60, and they wanted max sentence. Derek Cardosi was charged with life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Well, good.
So both are put away for a very, very, very long time. And it just sucks because you do something nice and you let your friends stay with you and then they murder you. So that sucks.
Kenzie's Crimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a north side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
See, says Heaven's Gate awaiting.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
And there's Kenzie's Crimes. If you came in near the end and didn't hear the setup, you can always go back to the podcast, the Brian and Kenzie podcast, anywhere you get them. Spotify, Apple, or the Q101 app, which is slickly redesigned. It's awesome. It's free, so download that to listen to Q101 and, of course, the Brian and Kenzie podcast. Coming up in music entertainment news, a lot of people getting near the end of the year. I really hope you're getting like a Christmas bonus. Somebody giving out a Christmas bonus of millions of dollars, $197 million in Christmas bonuses. Maybe you want to work for this person. We'll tell you who in about 10 minutes.
Brian and Kenzie in the morning, and Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.